Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And first and foremost, I want to apologize for the late
Well,
start. Abdurraheem is there and he can illustrate why there's been a bit of a delay, but it's also a revelation of sorts with regards to his culinary skills. Assalamu alaikum, Abdurraheem.
Walaikum assalam, Abdul Haqq, bro. Assalamu alaikum tutti. Aggiorno. I don't even know what cooking is in Italian. I'm making a pizza for my bambinis, for the kids and for the family. I went on a bike ride and we all are very hungry. Totally forgot about the podcast. Obviously, totally forgot. Because we've only done, like, we've been away for a while, isn't it? Like, there was a time when it was a regular thing. I was just getting you, just when you get used to it.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's about getting back into the groove and remembering that we have this. We're back to piece of cake every Saturday, and so that's why. And
Next week it's got to be a cake, not a pizza. Cake, not pizza next week.
Well, I've actually got a cake somewhere. Someone's done a cake, so there's a cake as well. So
and that
it's not me. I don't really cook cakes. So, but pizza I love. You know what pizza means in Italian? You know what it means? Pie.
No.
Yeah, the word pizza actually means pie. That's what it is. It's a pie.
How long have you been making pizza?
I've been making it a long time, but sort of this proper pizza I recently, maybe about a year ago, I got a proper pizza oven, like a proper one, and yeah, because the temperature goes really high on a proper pizza oven. So like your normal home oven is going to go to what, 300 degrees maximum, whereas pizza ovens go to like 450, 500 degrees. So you want it really hot, and your pizza's cooked in like 3-4 minutes. So it's a bit mad. You're going to see me rushing back and forth. But yeah, it's literally like what you get in the restaurant. Better. Yeah, it's like better because it's at home.
Good.
Totally fresh. And I make the dough myself and everything. So
I'm going to wait
the real difficult thing is learning to stretch the pizza. That's actually quite hard. It's actually quite hard to stretch it. And then you got this whole thing, it can easily tear as well. Anyway, it's a whole literally, it's a science, bro. It's incredible. Like when you start getting into it, all the different things about hydration, yeah, like it's basically what is the quantity of water you have with the flour, and like the more water you have, you know, percentage wise. So you know, like say you have 40%, or you have 60% hydration. That means if you've got 100 grams of flour, you will have 60 grams of water. So that's okay. But when you get higher, like 70, it becomes very, very hard to work with the dough. And then, you know, like it, but it becomes really, fluffy and soft. And there's a whole thing, bro. It's like, it's just incredible.
So you know
honestly, what? It's like a whole world. It's like the whole thing of bread and pizza. Like we take it for granted. We go to the supermarket, we grab a loaf of bread. But honestly, to think that our ancestors, almost all of them, bread was, you know, they all knew how to bake. They probably made their own bread, you know, and everyone has their own bread recipes. And, you know, and I think the thing is when you cook yourself, you do appreciate it's sort of the blessings of Allah. It's like all of these things, when you grow your own food, it just brings you that much closer to appreciating the bounties that Allah has bestowed on us. But anyway, bro, what is our topic about? It's not about pizza tonight, is it, bro? It's
but you know what?
A little bit more.
Abdurraheem, but it's a good lead-in though, because from to 2 points, we're going to be talking about the storm that's been cooked up. Yeah, that was deliberate with regards to what's happening on the global stage. But also on top of that, you're talking about grain, and we know that when Russia invaded Ukraine, we saw what happened to the grain and the depletion of resources around the world. It affected everyone, especially with regards to rice, with regards to flour. So, yeah, this is a good lead-in on that instance. And we previously spoke about Ukraine, but we're revisiting this in this new sort of season, if you like, because we're seeing again a contradiction in terms and in actualities with regards to the conflict that has recently erupted in Sudan. So I think that it's necessary that we look at this dichotomy of events, and we look at the contradictions that are there, and we ask ourselves why do we keep seeing such glaring disparities when we're looking from the perspective of citizens, when we're looking at the perspective of government, hypocrisy that is rife there in that instance. And I think it's something that many have been discussing and are looking at this particular point in time. And before I put it back to you, I want to say wa alaikum salam to brothers, sisters, guests who've joined us today, some old faces, some new ones. As you can see, we shoot from the hip, so to speak. If Abdurraheem's in the kitchen doing pizza, that's not going to stop a piece of cake. It should be a piece of pizza on this occasion, but we'll keep it as a piece of cake. The Green and Baker podcast. So Abdurraheem, your thoughts on why we're looking at these disparities, these I think hypocritical narratives.
I think the thing is that any sort of claim anymore that the West has some sort of moral high ground on which to lecture the rest of the world about human rights, no one takes them seriously anymore. Yeah. No one takes it seriously. Guantanamo Bay, you've probably seen the latest stuff released in the Guardian newspaper of, I don't know, the prisoner, the Palestinian prisoner there who's been there like since he was a kid. Virtually, he's probably never going to be released, and the horrible, horrible tortures that happened to him. Any claim that the West has of moral superiority, it's just gone out of the window. No one is taking them seriously anymore. And they used to pull out this card, human rights abuses, blah, blah, blah. No one gives a crap. No one ever, the world has stopped caring. Yeah. The world is just says, who are you to lecture us? Yeah. So I think the thing is that actually what surprises me, the number of people who are fooled by this nonsense. That's the only thing that surprises me. The thing that surprises me, how many, otherwise seemingly intelligent people, right? Waving Ukrainian flags and getting all sympathetic and actually even taking in Ukrainian refugees and this and that, and as if Britain gives a monkey about anything, right? It's just pure geopolitics. It's not even geopolitics. It's probably all to do with finance, because the big players in the world today are not countries. Countries are irrelevant. The whole idea of country sovereignty doesn't mean anything anymore. It's all about global finance. It's all about markets. It's all about manipulating. The real powers in the world today are, BlackRock and Vanguard and these big financial institutions. And there's a very interesting brother. You can find him on, TikTok, and I listen to him. I've recently started listening to him, and he sort of connects everything to that. He thinks that what Ukraine is about is actually destroying Europe. It's purposefully to destroy Europe, right? And to turn Europe into a war zone. Because that's the only way left to make money out of Europe. Okay? Heavy industry is declining, population is declining. Yeah, Europe is just not productive anymore. The age of people, who are retired is now 20% in Germany. Next year it's going to be like, 25%, 10, 20 years time it's going to be 50%, right? It's unsustainable. There's no economic viability in that. So what they're going to do, kill people off. That's literally what they're literally going to do. Kill people off, make money out of war, revert Europe probably back to some feudalistic, which is already going. It's already going there, right? I mean, the next level of draconian anti-demonstration laws, Abdul Haqq, bro, and about discrimination, and you've been ground through that whole thing, yeah. Even when the laws were, legally, they were doing things that were illegal. The police. How about when you give the police almost literally unlimited powers? You can walk down the street with your arm in arm with your wife, and you could literally be arrested. Because you have, under the new legislation, linking arms, arm in arm, is literally defined, connecting yourself to another human being, and the police could just decide, no, I'm going to arrest you.
Yeah, that's incredible. But you're
It's
absolutely
literally
right.
unlimited powers. This is here in the UK, right? And in the Independent, I read this morning in the Independent that the government literally went behind the back of Parliament, actually went against Parliament, inserted language changes and clauses into this bill, this crime and policing bill, right? Went literally against stuff that was rejected by Parliament. They put it in through some, loophole that there is. And as far as I know, it's been rejected by the House of Lords. Yeah, but it's just scary. Now, what are these people doing?
Right.
Right? And
To add
they
to that,
really don't care about our country. They really don't care about Britain. They don't care all of their protestations and this and that blog. They don't care. The only thing is finance, global finance, the big financial institutions, and making money, and it doesn't matter. The rest of us are all pawns in that. That's my thoughts on it, bro. And Ukraine is just part of the whole. It's just part of the whole plot, to be honest.
but
Even
you know
Sudan.
what?
There
Yeah,
are other players. So yeah, go on, bro. I'm just going to put my pizza in the oven. I'm listening, everyone. I'm still here. Yeah, go on, bro.
What you've said is fascinating, and I see it resonates with some of our viewers, and I tend to agree with what you're saying, and that's made all the more easier from the perspective of individualism. Now, from one of my businesses that I've brought back from living abroad, I was trying to locate and arrange hotel bookings, for example, for some of the clients that are coming over. And one of my vendors and colleagues spoke to me and said, look, Abdul Haqq, I'm finding it really difficult to block book hotels. And the hotels have actually told him that they have been ordered or sequestered, should I say, by the government to book particular rooms, keep them empty. Government has bought particular rooms that are empty. You might think, oh, brilliant, it's for the Sudanese or refugees coming over. That has a semblance of truth, but not to do with Sudan. But they're preparing, and what we're looking for is there's rumor that there may well be preparation for war, all-out war in July. And if you look at the trajectory that's actually there with what's happening with the UK the last few days, long-range missiles that they're sending over to Ukraine, the response from Putin regarding that, all of this speaks to what you're highlighting now. But then we have to look and flip the coin, the other side of the coin, and look at what's taking place in Sudan. Whereas we saw the scramble to help fleeing Ukrainians, we saw the British government shut the doors, lift up the ladders to the planes, so to speak, and abandon hundreds, if not thousands, of Brits, Sudanese Brits initially. And what was their reason and excuse and explanation for that? It was actually quite pitiful. Okay, we've seen other countries come in and help rescue those refugees. Saudi, for example, bringing them across the Red Sea, neighboring countries in that instance. But as you said, it's not about individuals, it's not about societies anymore, because this is not something that would have been even imaginable go back 20, 30 years ago. When we saw the initial Iraq war, when we saw Saddam Hussein parading those tourists, sitting the young child on his lap at that particular time, we saw the uproar from the UK, and we saw them saying, you have to release these individuals and send in a plane specifically for that. Oh, that looks really appetizing, Abdurraheem. MashaAllah, Tarakallah. But you don't see this consistency now, and there's a blatant disregard, a flagrant disregard.
Bro, is it because I is black?
There is the question. That became a, and you know what, Abdurraheem, let's be clear, let's be honest again. We spoke about it, alluded to it last week. Racism is on the rise, and it's as raw as we've seen it for many years. But you know what the frightening thing is about that, Abdurraheem, as well? A lot of other nationalities, okay, that were not originally British, and I mean that they've come and got status or whatever, second, third descent, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, as you like. You've got them banging the drum of colonialism and racism harder than the society apparatus itself, which in itself is systemically racist. So you've got it at so many different levels that it's very difficult to navigate today. But with the Sudanese situation, I think it is, when you contrast it with Ukraine, it's unequivocal. The racism, the subtleties of the racism are unequivocal. And again, let's just throw in Rwanda in that instance as well, because nobody from Ukraine has gone to Rwanda. Yes. So the racism is prevalent. It's right in front of our faces. But there is an inability for us to do other than what we're doing now and protest. And the government
knows. You can't even protest, bro. You can't even protest.
Yeah, no, I'm saying for the society, not for us. We don't protest, I hear you. But I'm saying that's the limitations. They don't care about our voices. And they've seen that the effects of protest have become irrelevant. We've seen that over the decades, and we're seeing that more so now.
I don't know, bro. I think, this what you said about war in July, that's pretty scary, bro.
This is what hotels were telling my colleague, told me straight up. I can't really reveal any more than that. But from my further inquiries, this is the rationale why some of those hotels are block booked. Because there's going to be an influx. They are preparing for an influx and increase from Ukraine in or around July.
So what are you saying is happening? What, UK is going to go to war?
No, there's going to be there's going to be this is what the hotels were telling my colleague. As I said, I'm not going to say more than that from a confidential perspective, but what the information that they'd shared with him was not to be scoffed at. That there may be, or there's at least preparation for an escalation from where we currently are.
Well,
that preparation's not there with the Sudan, though.
No, bro, because they, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a bigger thing going on, bro. The bigger thing is, like we talked about it, we hinted at it, I think, last week. It's the whole thing to do with the breaking away from the dollar. This is the big thing with China, Russia breaking away from the dollar. I don't really know what's going on. I don't trust any of them. I don't trust Russia. I don't trust Russia anymore. I don't trust Russia any more than anybody else. I don't even know if they're all in on it together. I mean, I don't know, bro. The whole, it started a long time ago, bro. I mean, that's brothers and sisters. It started a long time ago. This is, it's the old adage, the old story of the frog being slowly boiled to death. That's what's happened. You can take it back. And you can see we're the frogs. We've been put in this, nice little pond, and we're all croaking away, being fed all the most delicious things that any frog could want. But little do we know that bit by bit by bit, the temperature's being turned up. And, maybe you've sort of noticed something's funny's going on. It's not like it used to be, but you just, it's just bit by bit by bit. Until really, if you look back, bro, and we've said this again and again and again, Abdul Haqq, we on our Piece of Cake podcast, the world is not the same. You remember what it was like pre 9/11. You remember you could stand in Speaker's Corner and say anything. You weren't afraid. We could talk about any topic that we liked. It's literally short of insulting the Queen, say whatever you like. Yeah. We didn't have fear to talk. We didn't have fear to express our minds and our views. Yeah. And they may have been unsavory to some people, and some people may have expressed unsavory views to us. But the problem is, to be honest, bro, we probably haven't helped ourselves. Yeah. Right. Because often we're the cheerleaders. Yeah. Shutting down hate speech and this and that. And yeah, it's not very nice, but you have to understand, everyone needs to understand that, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And there's always some other agenda, right? when they're saying, oh yeah, we were going to stop them saying nasty things about your Quran and we all get happy. Yeah, but that also means that you are not going to be able to say things as Muslims, right? And it's like that, bro.
Right.
You can't criticize. It's very, very problematic to criticize homosexuality. Even calling it a sin has become problematic, right? Saying, to someone, oh, you're going to go to hell. Even that, something like that, it's become mad, bro.
There's been
the conversation has been shut down, and we've been
right.
party to it because what is more important for most of us is just a nice little cozy life, right? Most people are not involved in dawah like you and me have been. They don't understand that with dawah comes challenges, and what dawah involves: talking to people, saying things that make people uncomfortable. That's
right.
part of what dawah is, right?
Right.
But people didn't come here for dawah, bro. They came here to milk the cow. And the cow's running out of milk, bro.
Right. And in the process, whatever aspirations they had for their children have been shattered in part because a number have embraced what is the individualistic ideology that many are now pursuing. And with individualism, Abdurraheem, that causes dilution of solidarity and unity. And that's why the governments and these multinational agencies are able to implement the strategies that they're implementing. Good to see you back, reactionary, and that reactionary always, well, not always, occasionally disagrees with us. So he's saying what we're discussing is nonsense, Abdurraheem. So I wonder what reactionary has to say that is.
Yeah. Please tell us why it's nonsense. Yeah.
What is the sense? Yeah, he's saying there's no such thing as freedom of speech without restriction.
Well, okay. Who said? I mean, we're not saying that. No one said that. But how about the other end of the spectrum, when you are only free to say what the government lets you say, right? Where do you draw the line? Where are you drawing the line at stopping freedom of speech? Yeah. It's become so absurd that you can't offend someone. You can't offend someone anymore. How can you have a conversation? How can you challenge ideas? How can you discuss anything without the possibility of someone being offended? This is how absurd it's become, right? We don't, it's not about freedom of speech per se as some ideal that never existed, doesn't exist. I agree with that. But I didn't. Did I say that? Did I say there should be unlimited freedom of speech? I didn't say that.
No.
Right?
But also,
all I said is things have changed. There was a time back in the late 1990s, the mid 1990s. There's things you could say then, right? You could be very frank. You could have frank discussions. You can't have those discussions anymore. That's just the fact, right?
And part of that, Abdurraheem, as well, is when the Conservatives came in with the Liberal Democrats, what we saw then around, 2010, we saw them embrace an ideological paradigm, which government is not supposed to do. They illustrated, particularly with regards to Muslims, okay, that they wanted to see a particular brand of Islam and Muslim prevalence, dominance, if you like, in the UK. That was unashamedly highlighted in their interviews, in their not necessarily policy, but in their statements, which were articulated. And then we saw terminology demonizing or become demonized with respects to Islam. So we know, for example, Khilafah was something that became a demonized term. Islamism was brought in to, which is now the Razandata, which they use with regards to when they want to talk about extremism, Islamist extremism. We've seen, Allah forbid that we mention Islamic State, even in the English term now, because it's no longer referring to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's more, so terminologies were then highlighted and Yes, reactionary saying Labour is more anti-Muslim than the Tories. Reactionary, I wouldn't. I'm not neither. I'm not neither for Labour or for Tories. I'm looking at the trend and the trajectory that Abdurraheem has mentioned. Things were not like this previously. Governments were not obviously openly ideological in their leanings towards what they would prefer to see societally. This is something relatively recent, and you juxtapose that alongside the individualism that has been driven in this society, and the chasm, the Richter's gap that we're looking at now, in which we're almost mute when anything is taking place, is where we find ourselves. Okay, you say those terms in the war and the terror, but no, reaction, not all of them were. If you go back and you look, not all of them were. And the ideological underpinning was furthered by the Conservatives. I remember looking and being observant of that around that time. But this is not about Labour or this is not about Labour or Conservatives or Liberal Democrats. Yes, Liam, absolutely right, my brother. Non-violent extremism was another term that was brought in. We've seen the term radicalization being frowned upon now, whereas what we've seen, the very bedrock of universities and education, and if you want to dare say enlightenment, was having radical views which were to change society. But yes, there are categorizations of the type of violence, violent extremism or radicalization that we need to look at. Yes, as Bilal is saying, neither side is worth comparing. They exist to fuel each other within the same system. So, reactionary, I don't think you'll disagree with that observation by Brother Bilal. The point of the matter is now, let's see where we find ourselves between the Sudan and the Ukraine and the different shades of grey. So if we want to say that there's a particular system that's being deployed by a particular government, why are there such inconsistencies in how Sudan is being dealt with and how the Ukraine is being dealt with? We can go back 20 or so years when we saw the invasion into Iraq, the incursion into Iraq. And then when we look at other countries that are not oil havens, as it were. Thank you, Reaction. I'm glad we've come back to agreeing, but it's good what you've said. It's good that you've provoked this sort of discussion. But when we look back then and we look back now and we compare, the same standards are there. Where there's a vested interest economically, and there is the racial undercurrent that's there as well, we see more attention being paid to where those benefits can be yielded from. We look at Iraq and we see that the society is being crippled. The society is being crippled. We see other societies that do not have the same resources. We see the paralyzation and crippling of sorts in some of the African countries because of their resources. And then when you look at others, no attention is being paid at all. Yet the socio-economic or the socio-cultural or whatever, the interreligious, the civil discord that are in those societies are comparable. And yes, Shaisa, very good question. What is the attraction of the Sudan for the West? There isn't any. That's why they're not paying the same attention as they're paying to Ukraine. Geopolitically, the Ukraine is far more important. But when you look at the Sudan, and when you look at the Sudan's strategic positioning, we had the split of North and South Sudan. When you look at the Sudan, it would be a fool's errand to ignore the geopolitical undercurrents as Sudan relates to the Muslim, African, and Arab world. But the West are not concerned with that at the moment. That is not a priority. That is not a priority. And it should be a priority looking at the weakening of the West, particularly the UK and America, as it relates to countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and the like. So it's a really short, blinkered perspective they've got as they're looking at Ukraine, because it's like they're navel gazing almost. Like, this is our priority, not just from a racial point, but from the geopolitical point that Abdurraheem is mentioning. So what you'll see is proactivity with Ukraine and reactivity as events emerge in Sudan and spill out across a wider geopolitical footprint, if you like. Abdurraheem, what do you have to say on some of these observations?
Sorry, bro, my mic was off. Yeah, bro, I think that, I mean, you're right. I mean, there must be an interest in Sudan. It can't be that there is no interest there. I mean, strategically, it has importance. There's no doubt about it. But is it just that other players are operating in that area? That's the question, right? Because you have to see what's going on. You have to see who's playing the game, yeah? Who's benefiting? Where's the money? Yeah.
Right.
So what's going on, right? So you have two factions, and so basically, from what I heard is, it seems to be very, you know, the surface of it seems to be that the Sudanese government was allowing Russia to have a naval base in Sudan, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then America initiated a coup, as they always do when someone goes ahead and does something they don't like. It's time for a coup, right? That's what seems to be, you know, that seems to be what happens, right? So this other factions come in. They want to, you know, presumably they're on. I don't really know, bro. I'll be honest. I'll be honest, bro. I don't really know, guys, much about it. I mean, literally, it's one of those things that I listen to something here, and I listen to something there. I pick up something here and there. And do I really know? I don't know. I don't study geopolitics. I'm not deeply into it. There was a time when I used to study politics a lot. I don't really do that anymore. And that's the honest truth. You know, my focus, bro, has been for years, as you know, the last, I don't know how many years, it's been on dawah, on calling people to La ilaha illallah. That's really what my focus is about, calling people who are not yet Muslim to Islam. And, you know, I think, you know, I find it empowering, Abdul Haqq. The problem is with all of these geopolitics, the moment you start to spend a little bit too much time thinking about it, you get pretty frustrated and you feel disempowered. You feel hopeless. What can we do? What can we do about Ukraine? What can we do about Sudan? Practically very little. Yeah, we can send a bit of charity there. We can help out those people who are suffering, and, you know, and so we should. But in real terms, what can we do? Nothing much. But there's lots that we can do just generally. Like that, the question you need to ask is, what does Allah want you to do? How does Allah want you to spend your time? What does Allah want you to utilize your energy with? I think this is the really important question. And sometimes it may seem remote, Abdul Haqq, bro. It may seem really remote. You know, it's like, oh, I've even had brothers making fun of it. You know, oh, such and such situation came and the brother's solution is give dawah, right? Ha ha, what sort of nonsense is that? And I understand that. It does seem like nonsense. Yeah, it does seem like nonsense.
It's not.
But but the thing is, bro, what else are you gonna do? You know, first of all, you can bleat and cry and talk about Muslim unity and the Khilafah, and we need this and that, and, you know, we need an economic system, and we need this and that. Good, you know, fine. I'm sure all of that is true. But these are big things. And for the average person, bro, most people are just trying to say their prayers 5 times a day. That's the reality. Most people out there are just struggling to hang on to their iman and their children's iman. How
and you know,
is
can I come in on that?
Worried about these things going to help you? It's not.
Now, I agree. You know what you said, and it's really important that you've brought that in now at this point, because we've called it shades of grey, Sudan and Ukraine. Okay, and when we look at what you've said about the call to Tawheed, and we look at the call of the Anbiya, and there were geopolitics taking place in their time.
Definitely were, yeah.
And what did they continue to call to? So there are many shades of grey around a lot of what is taking place now. But what does Allah tell us with regards to the call to Tawheed? He lifts us from what? Levels of darkness, dhulumat, ila nur, to light. And if only those who were mocking, oh, you're going to call to Tawheed, you're going to give dawah, understood the impact of this call, the longevity of this call, the overarching effect of this call. It was this very call that we saw the geopolitical structure of Arabia dismantle over 23 years. It was this geopolitical, it was this call to Tawheed that we saw the Abyssinian state leader embrace Islam and these followers embrace Islam. It was this same single call to Tawheed that we saw hierarchical structures transform. So Abdurraheem, what you're saying is a very important point, because there are no shades of darkness in this call. And when we look at it from an individualistic ideology, it's counter to that. When we look at it from a societal perspective, and we see the harms that are affecting us societally at the moment, is as a result of divorcing ourselves from Tawheed, from monotheism, from this call. As you said, when it comes to it ultimately, and let's look at this, Abdurraheem, you and I have spoken about this many, many times, okay? I learned of a young individual who was part of our community passing away. They found his body 2 days ago. We've got another close sheikh of mine passed away when I just returned back from the UK, to the UK, but he died a few weeks ago as well. And ultimately, for everyone listening here, Muslim and non-Muslim, we're going to be asked 3 questions in the grave. That's it. We're going to be asked 3 questions in the grave. And none of them are going to relate to our positions geopolitically.
Politics, yeah.
We're going to be asked, who was your Lord? And it's not an academic question. What was your deen? Not religion, your deen. Deen encompasses, it encapsulates religion. And the final question, who was that man who was sent amongst you? And we will have to have lived and actualized the reality of all these 3 questions. It's not like an academic exam. It's not like the SAT tests recently that everyone's lamenting about were too difficult for their children and everything like that. So when we're looking, because many of us get stressed out about what is taking place in the world today. And I'm not saying, and I don't think for one moment Abdurraheem is saying we should be ignorant of that. But what is being said is, in the grand scheme of things, what are we responsible for first and foremost? Okay, what are we responsible for first and foremost? And in enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, there are 3 levels. If you can stop it with your hands, then do so. If not, then with your tongue or writing with the pen. And if you're unable to do even that, then you must have that iman, even if it's at the weakest level, to hate it in your heart, but not to be oblivious to it. And unfortunately, many of us are even beyond the 3rd and weakest stage of hating it in our hearts. We simply don't care. So it's really important, I believe, Abdurraheem, what you've brought in at this particular juncture, because someone was saying, okay, what are the political positions? Reactionary provoked a very good discussion around the governments and Labour, or party, should I say, Labour, Conservatives and everything. And in actuality, in bringing that to the fore, we've teased out what is really important for the whole of mankind. And that is Tawheed. Because the changes that will take place will ultimately come from a divine, overarching, powerful source, being none other than our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely, bro. I think, you know, like we always have to bring it back to this, yeah, because we can analyze as long as we like, and I think that's the key. It's like, of course we care about these people, of course we care about the situations, you know, and but the other thing is, bro, it's not for everybody. The reality is, we also have to understand it's that not for everyone to get involved in this stuff, right? There are only a limited number of people who know what to do, know what to say, who understand the situation, even not even completely, but, you know, to some extent that they have, you know, it's that hadith, bro, isn't it, of Al-Rawaybadah will speak out, yeah,
right, Right.
That, you know, like any person comes along, you know, and just speaks about, you know, public affairs, you know,
That's right.
speaks about geopolitics, speaks with no idea, probably can't even find Sudan on a map.
Yeah.
You know, and yet at the same time feels entitled to talk about it and come out with solutions and, you know, attack this country and that country and criticize this and that and, you know, all of that type of stuff.
Right. And you know what,
Out of
Abdurraheem?
the way with that, bro.
No, you're right. And you know what's important as well? Let's go back to a governmental level. Some of you may not be aware that the government requested an independent review a few years ago that's just been released recently, the last few months. I've been reading it. The Bloom Review, Does Government Do God? An independent review into how government engages with faith. And this is a fascinating report. Okay, it's the first time ever that a report has been done in this country by the government. And what I've read so far is overwhelmingly positive about the place of faith in British society and how government needs to take more notice and involve themselves in discourse with faith groups because of the overwhelmingly positive effect of faith. And what I'm going to do, because I've got the report, so I'll summarize. I'm not going to go into detail.
Well,
Go on, Abdurraheem.
No, bro. I mean, the thing is that I think this needs a proper review.
It does.
Because this is not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing about this report is this is a smokescreen. It's when you get down to the nitty-gritty details of basically when he means religion, he basically means Christianity. The guy who's written this report is a well-known evangelical Christian, right? Along with Gove, with a clear hatred of Islam, a track record of being anti-Muslim, right? The proposals about controlling madrasas and homeschooling is blatant and stated clearly. Islam has a problem that Christianity doesn't. And it's about control. It comes back to the same thing about control. And so when they say, yeah, religion is overwhelmingly positive, they'll say these things, bro. Government, even the conservatives, they don't like religion. They don't like religion at all, bro. You know, religion is one of the biggest threats. Real religion is one of the biggest threats to their system of control. Because when you're only afraid of God, yeah. I mean, the sort of religion where people are just, you know, how can you say? Anyway, bro, you talk about the review. I want to hear what you got to say.
Right. So that's an interesting point, Abdurraheem, because that is there. When I say the comments that it's overwhelmingly positive, this is what I want us to look at from that perspective. I've said that because it provides an avenue in which the visibility of our faith can be driven. Okay.
Right.
Because all other faiths can take advantage and become more visible through this avenue. Previously, our faith, and it's still happening to an extent now, but this is an avenue that we can go through, I believe.
So what are they saying? What is the report saying? Give us a lowdown of what you're...
Basically, the report, as I said, the report is saying, I haven't completed it, and there are those elements that you've spoken about. There is that sort of like tongue-in-cheek Islam aspect of Islam or Islamism is a problem. But what the report is saying is the society, government cannot ignore or sideline religion because of the impact it has upon the adherence to these faiths. And this is why I'm saying this is overwhelmingly good in the sense that if we're going to practice our faith and we want to practice it more transparently, we want to be more open, we want to be less cowed by what's happened over the last decades or so in that instance, this report provides that avenue, but to a limited extent. Let's not fool ourselves that they're saying, okay, kumbaya, everyone can do what they want to do. No. But by them doing this now, we can hold them to account by their own measures and highlight the hypocrisy when it's there. That's the purpose of this report, Abdurraheem. Not to jump in and say, oh, it's wonderful, we can do all of this now. As I said, no. But it's bringing an avenue through which we can move, which we can navigate through a different channel. Not just us, it's about all religion. What the point is, this report has been done. And you're right. When I read the first few pages, like, he's very positive about Christianity. He's positive about Islam, but where's the bite going to come? He's mentioning other faiths in that regard. The point of the matter is, they were compelled to conduct such a review. And yes, Gove, who we know is, enough said about Gove, he was one who reviewed the report first, or the review first. And I don't think, or I'm unaware of his comments in that regard, but it wouldn't have come out if it wasn't palatable for government, if it wasn't palatable for Gove, if it wasn't palatable for the wider Christian faith in that instance. But again, there's that acknowledgement.
Well, these people, they produce these reports and then just ignore them when it suits them. They don't give a crap.
They do.
That's why I don't trust these people. They did this. You heard flipping Braveman come on flipping TV talking about Pakistani, Pakistani paedophile gangs. Yeah, it's a particular Pakistani problem. Their own report said the opposite.
Exactly.
Their own report said paedophilia. Most of the paedophile gangs are white people. They're not
exactly.
And they ignored it. Their own report, bro. They don't care.
Yeah, no, Abdurraheem, I wrote about that. But you know what? Remember, what's one of the things that we do? Establishing hujjas. The Prophet ﷺ was told he's only here to establish the proof. Okay, that's necessary. And how do you do that? You do that using their own resources, their own reports. When I read that, what Scholar Braverman has said, okay, she's coming to a position that a predecessor has said something different to. Okay, Sajid Javid had said something different too. But because she's bending over backwards to please the colonial paradigm through which we're living, she made such a blooper. So my thing is, thank you, Liam. Yes, there are opportunities there, okay? A platform upon which to stand and say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Whether that's accepted or not. And this is the thing, Abdurraheem. The environment and climate of pessimism, I'm not saying that this is what you're saying, but the climate of pessimism, apathy, and suspicion that we have is a valid one, but it's got so pervasive that it's there amongst us as a Muslim community as well. And I think that that's being done by design by society. When you see how fractured we are as communities, you would agree with me. Where is the unity? Where is there even the leadership that we can look at to move forward? So me bringing this report is not from a leadership perspective, but it hasn't been discussed. It hasn't been engaged with from amongst us. Okay, there will be the naysayers. Okay, and there always will be the naysayers. But my thing is to say, do you know what? How can we take advantage of this and shine the light back towards, put the lens back towards the government for the very reason that you've said that they do not practice or adhere to what they sanction themselves? That's an important role that we need to be playing in society.
Yeah, so what do you think we should be doing, bro?
What I think we should be doing is looking at how we could, I think...
I just think from a political sense, what do you think?
From a political perspective, I think it should be where we should be looking to rally and unite. I'm not saying politically in that instance. There needs to be a coming together, and there needs to be a common sense of purpose where we stand. Our children are being affected by what's taking place in schools. Okay, we're being affected by so many from so many angles that are being thrown at us, but there's not a unity, and I'd love to see that. Not on Aqidah, we're not going to get into that instance there, but a unity in which we can stand and push back against some of the tide that's coming towards us of these foreign influences. And when I say foreign, I mean ideologies that we're being forced to digest. And I think we've got a caller in, and it's our brother Reactionary. And we've spoken before, I think, but Reactionary, please come on board. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you doing, Dr. Baker and Anthony Green? Hope you're both well.
Doing well. How are you?
Yes. Alhamdulillah. I've got a quick question for you. Like, don't you think it's about time Muslims launch their own political party? Like,
Fantastic.
it doesn't have to, it can have a good name like, I don't know, Authentic English or something like that, but something that represents Muslims or Islam, and it gives the people of England the opportunity to choose Islam as their way of life.
That's a fantastic question, actually, you know, and it speaks to what we've just been talking about when Abdurraheem asked me, what do you think we should do? I think it's a difficult answer to make.
Very good question.
Because we have to look at, I think
we have tried it before, by the way. I was a member of that political party.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let you get in. Let me finish. I'm going to let you get. So my thing, what I would be asking in that instance, Abdurraheem, is what do we take into consideration from the religiosity of it, from the socio-religious paradigm, and what would the constitution look like? I know that's a big counter question. So Abdurraheem, you've just said you were part of a political party that was there. I think you're best placed to answer and elucidate further on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that, look, it's very challenging, and I think you know, it's a good question, bro. That's the first thing. It's a really good question to raise, and literally you came on, and I was going to literally say to Abdul Haqq, you know, but the problem is a lot of the people that even 5 years ago would be, you know, telling their people to support Labour. It would have been, you know, that like Muslims supported Labour. It's just quite clear. But they're asking this question: are Labour actually any better? Are they any, you know, is this doing us any favors? And people are beginning to realize that it's not. That they, first of all, they don't really see much difference between the two political parties. They don't see that either of them really offer anything for Muslims substantially, right? Except tokenism. And the real major concerns that we have, they're just being sidelined constantly. And, you know, and voices that I never would have imagined would be saying things like this are saying, we need to do something. We need to present our own alternative. We need to create our own power structures. We need to find ways of doing things ourselves that is outside the realm of these, you know, these political parties. Now, what exactly does that look like? Does that mean having another political party? I'm not so sure. I think, you know, I'm sort of a little bit there with, what's his name, Russell Brad. He just thinks the whole system is so fundamentally corrupt and so fundamentally wrong and so fundamentally misaligned that getting involved in politics is a digression. We need a whole different system. We need a whole different way of looking at things and doing things. And that's probably what we have to really work towards. That's what I think. Anyway.
AI mentioned lobby groups, similar to other faith groups like the Jewish faith. Lobby groups like the Jews, as AI channel is asking. Reactionary, what's your thoughts on Abdurraheem's response and what we've just discussed here?
Yeah, I see what he's saying in terms of a person who presents a political party that operates within the sort of norms of current political parties, where they, you know, give and take and trade to make votes, and only vote in favor of what they've been lobbied to vote for. So corporations have influence over MPs. What I see Islam would offer, when I say Islam, a party that would like to present Islam to this country in terms of criminal law and civil law, etc. We can say, look, the constitution would be different. Our constitution, look at a dawah, just think of it from a dawah perspective. You go on a show like Question Time, and you'll just be presenting Tawheed. Yeah, they already hate Islam. They already, you know, present it in the worst light whatsoever. What extra harm can you receive by presenting a party?
What you're saying is the real benefit of having such a political party is creating a platform in which you can present Islam as a real alternative, not because our real intention is to get involved in politics or, you know, go into parliament, be voted MPs and this and that. And like, Because you know what you see happening, bro, is the problem is, again, I'm not an expert. You know, I've studied a little bit here and there.
Brother, can I just correct you on that?
Yeah, of course, bro. Go on. Yeah,
I'm not saying it's either or. It's a combination. So one of the goals would be to give the opportunity for people in the country to live under Islam, right? There are countries around the world where non-Muslims would prefer to live under Muslim rules, okay, because they feel there's more justice there. And that will be the case in the UK, I'm sure, as well. People are taxed left, right, and center, right? They complain about the jizya, but I'm sure the jizya is a lot less taxing on people than the current state of tax in the UK.
Now, very, very, very pertinent point. But looking at what Shaista's saying here as well, that we're fooling ourselves if we think we can do dawah in Western politics. But I think that speaks to what you're saying, actually, that having a party that calls to La ilaha illallah, the point there, that there are the challenges, I think, looking at the paradigm within which we would have to operate such a party. And let's say, for example, yes, you said that there are non-Muslims who like to live under in Muslim societies. I've been 20 years in the Middle East, and I've seen a lot of non-Muslim expats after retiring returning back to the Middle East because they've said, look, this reminds us of some of the values that we used to have in the societies from which we came. And as AI is saying, he's saying Britain is not ready for the ideas that you're highlighting, and this is a discussion in and of itself, I think.
And nor was Mecca at the time, right?
Very true, and that's why you heard me refer to the call to Tawheed was that the one thing that systematically upended the geopolitical apparatus at that time. I think as well, but reaction, let me come back on a slightly different angle. If we had pressure groups and we had these groups that AI was lobby groups, we know from before, and okay, we don't have the Islamic State, and I'm not talking about Daesh, we're talking about the true Islamic State, where the power base was such that if one area or region of the Ummah was affected, that there would be a galvanization to defend that particular region. We don't even have that on a localized level as it relates to living in the UK, as it relates to Sudan. Now, we're seeing other countries, some like Saudi Arabia, neighboring countries, Muslim and non-Muslim, rallying towards helping the Sudanese. We've seen how non-Muslim European society has rallied towards the Ukraine. But Abdurraheem mentioned something important earlier on. In another context, we should widen it. We are accountable for, I would say, ineffectiveness. I want to say ineptitude in coming together to place pressure or to lobby where we see oppression locally, nationally, or internationally. We haven't even got that base or that type of entity or entities in existence at the moment. Do you think, reactionary, that would be a place to start?
I fully agree with what you're saying, and the issue, right, with why Muslims are in this state is because they have this disease of nationalism, right? Every country for their own. And so Muslims who come to the UK, they bring that nationalism with them. So you've got every mosque in the UK is tied to a nation. You've got a Bangladeshi mosque, a Pakistani mosque, an Egyptian. Everyone has got their own interest at play, rather than a collective Muslim, English Muslim or British Muslim identity that cares for the British Muslims' needs. So yes, we do need some sort of lobbying organization, but how is that going to develop when everybody is out for their own exclusive group, right? So that needs to be overcome. And I think a Muslim party for the UK would be a collective representation for everyone that is has a similar stake, right? A similar stake, but they can put aside their ethnic or nationalistic differences and be British and Muslim?
I think that reactionary. Thanks for that, bro. I do think some things are changing. Not as much as I thought they were going to be honest. Yeah, I'm actually still shocked at how many third generation youth still actually pass on and cling to and propagate some really nasty cultural practices, you know, that their grandfathers had. You thought they would have jettisoned. I don't, you know, I'm talking about cultural attitudes that you would have imagined would have been jettisoned by now. But having said that, you know, I don't think that's actually so across the board. In fact, I think there's a big change, and I do think that there's a whole generation of youth who don't identify themselves by those cultural, you know, those cultural standards anymore, and they very much look at themselves, as you're saying, reactionary, as British Muslims. You know, as well, they look at themselves as being British and being Muslim. How they connect the two things, or whether they call themselves British Muslims, I don't know. But you know, they look at themselves as Muslim, and they look at themselves as British. They don't really connect themselves back to some, you know, something back home anymore so much. So the real problem, the real challenge, I think, is that along with that has come a, you know, basic, number one, a distancing from Islam. Because one of the things those cultural values did, they were very, very much tied up with Islam. There was a very strong love for Islam. And, you know, for better or for worse, you know, and sometimes they may not be practicing, but they still had this love. You know, I mean, my wife was brought up in a family where no one prayed. They didn't go to Jummah. They didn't fast Ramadan. They didn't celebrate even Eid, not even Eid. Yeah, nothing. But their dad, you know, may Allah bless his soul, alhamdulillah, Allah guided him. He did teach them Quran. He taught all of his kids to read Quran in Arabic and made them read the whole Quran, not only in Arabic, but also, you know, he went through with them the whole tafsir of it and, you know, the English explanation as well. The point that I'm saying is that there was this attachment and love for Islam. Unfortunately, I do think that there is a huge segment of our, you know, demographic that has really just given up on Islam altogether. That's a real challenge. The second thing is that reactionary, this is where I really agree with you, the gist of what you're saying. I think there has been a massive failure from our thinkers, ulama, imams, du'at, and I include myself in this, yeah, as a da'i, that there have been some really huge opportunities for us to articulate how Islam has real, genuine, impressive solutions to massive challenges that have been facing people in society. But we just have not been able to articulate a good argument for it. My biggest example of this is the financial crash that happened. It must have been when was it? 7 years ago, 8 years ago, with the banks collapsing and the big financial crash. And, you know, you had people like the Prime Minister at the time of Ireland saying, well, if we had Islamic economics, this wouldn't have happened. Yet I didn't see, and I'm including myself, right? And I admit I'm clueless when it comes to economics. I'm really clueless, yeah? But almost no one was able to articulate a very simple, easy to understand case for why Islamic economics as a system is extremely powerful, and it avoids a lot of the tyranny and oppression and injustice and wrongdoing that, you know, that we saw as a result of that system. You know, it's not just enough to say, oh, look, the banks charge riba, you know, interest is bad. Islam doesn't allow interest, you know, in Islam is good. I mean, you can say that, but that's not enough. So on the other hand, there are books and there are people who will articulate detailed descriptions of this contract is not allowed, this one is halal, but it has some shubahat in it, and whatever. But in between, where someone can articulate a really powerful argument why this is such a good system, I didn't really see anyone able to do it. I didn't really see anyone come forth, and it's a missed opportunity. And by the way, there have been a lot of missed opportunities like that, and we are missing these opportunities right now. Okay, so I think that it's not my favored way of giving dawah. My method of giving dawah is very much based upon tawheed and calling people to. When I say tawheed, of course, Tawheed encompasses everything, including Allah's beautiful Sharia. We can't exclude that from Tawheed, astaghfirullah, right? It's all part of the guidance. But when I say, and my focus is very much on the existence of Allah, the oneness of Allah vis-a-vis, believing that Jesus is God, or atheism or secularism as a general thing. But there's no doubt that these very specific things that Allah brings it's like Allah is putting it there, right? It's like an opportunity, and we're just not ready. We just have not been ready. Even this Ukraine crisis, Sudan crisis, how have we used all of these things to articulate a case for the incredibly positive and solution-based guidance that our religion provides for these type of situations? By and large, it hasn't happened. By and large, not with a dawah focus, and I think this is part of the problem.
Yeah, very quickly then.
Let me finish. I'm just going to wrap up, bro. One last thing I want to say. I'm going to finish. Yeah, I think it comes down to a mindset, and I'm sure reactionary are going to agree with me. The Muslims are still so obsessed with ourselves. We're narcissistic. Yeah, not individually narcissistic, ummah-wide narcissistic. We're so busy looking in the mirror, dreaming about our glorious past and how amazing we used to be once upon a time, and dreaming that somehow is going to come back, and forgetting that just right next to us are people who sometimes you just need to reach out to them and say, have you heard about Islam? We've forgotten, and we're still like that. We're so obsessed with our own issues, we forget that there is still 3/4 of humanity who are not Muslim. That's it, bro. Sorry, that's what I got to say.
Before you jump in, we're going to conclude with actually speaking on this as well. And Abdurraheem, a very important points you've articulated. Jazakallah khair. But also that narcissism of looking in the mirror and heralding our glorious and illustrious past. We're failing in one big area here again, and I'll come back to it, and I alluded to it when we're talking about the groups and the focus groups and pressure groups and lobbies and everything, is that also, Abdurraheem, when we're looking across or over our shoulder, we've got Muslims who are struggling with their identity, with loneliness, with hidden disabilities. I know you agree with me, Abdurraheem. And what's happening, other than superficial platitudes, we're not putting in that work, walking that extra mile, sacrificing. And that narcissism is such that even those leaders amongst us in our masajid, I was once one, hopefully I wasn't like that. Allah knows best, some may say different, but sacrifice means service to others. Okay, dawah is a service to others. Being good to your neighbor is a service to others, but we won't extend ourselves beyond our comfort zone. It's self-interest. So we've bought into that individualistic ideology that society is pushing at the moment. We really need to get our houses in order, that we're sitting there watching what's happening to some of the Muslims in Sudan, watching what's happening to the Uyghurs and everywhere else. And we might jump up and shout and cry for a minute, and then it all goes quiet. And who's the one raising the attention of these causes? It's the Western media. And if it's coming from avenues that are not Western, how authentic are they? Because we've seen fake news being proliferated on news, showing a video of someone being tortured, saying this is whatever regime that's doing this. and it's a video from 15, 20 years ago, and it's altogether something else that's taking place. And the people who are being attacked or whatever were the ones who instigated the problem in the first place. And this is the sort of unreliability that we have through our own channels. So we've got a lot to look at, a lot of before we move forward and look outwardly, while still giving the dawah outwardly. And Reactionary, please come in, and then we can start wrapping up this very interesting session, inshallah.
Yes, brother. And first of all, I didn't expect to find myself agreeing with you so much. I've never agreed with you so much on any previous show, but everything you both say tonight is quite agreeable. I would like to say, we've been told for a long time by whoever has been teaching us Islam that you know the ayah that أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا يغير الله ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah will not change the state of a people until they change that which is with themselves, and that we have leaders who represent the state of the people. So the focus should be on changing the people and doing da'wah. Yes, that's correct, okay, on the whole, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't have in place people who are leading and planning a way to establish Allah's religion. Okay, and that's why when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I mean, you both know better than me. I'd love to hear how you explain how the society in Medina was established and as an Islamic society. All right, there had to have been some preparation. There had to have been some sort of interaction with the political parties of that society at the time, in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to come in and establish a constitution. Now, what we seem to be being told is, no, just don't get involved. Shut your eyes, close your, put your fingers in your ears, get on with ibadah, and forget real life. Whereas when you apply the same situation to applying for a job or looking for an increase in income, nobody would apply that logic, because you're told it's not enough to make dua and pray all night to get a job. No, you have to also put in the work. You have to train yourself. You have to develop new skills, develop a CV, and apply for work. You have to do work to get work. But we're told to just don't do any work, and an Islamic society will come by itself. So yeah, that's just my final comment. And Jazakumullah khairah for having me on. I won't outstay my welcome to that.
Thanks, bro.
Reactionary, it's good to have you. You've been one who you've kept us on our toes in the positive way over the last years, I think it was, and engaging with you on this occasion has been really good and beneficial for us all. I think the audience as well, mashallah, tabarakallah. I want to say jazakallah khair to Reactionary first and foremost, and to all of you who've been contributing, those who've come back on board, mashallah, tabarakallah. The discussion, Abdurraheem, to you, Hassan in the background for fielding everything. We're looking at some big issues, but I think the conclusion is where Abdurraheem intervened with saying what the main cause is and purpose is, and that is Tawheed, La ilaha illallah, which again Abdurraheem has articulated is not just lip service. It encompasses, it enshrouds everything of what we're doing in the Sharia. And I think Brother Reactionary has brought some really thoughtful aspects to consider. And again, I would refer to what I was speaking about, self-reflection, the levels of enjoining good and forbidding evil. What is our duty? What are we here for? And how do we engage with this society? As Reactionary said, yeah, you don't just go turn up in your pajamas at a job and say, I heard there's a vacancy and I'm coming for it. There's preparation. There is preparation. Medina wasn't just built upon just traveling out there and it just happened. Preparation, and the right type of preparation with the right intention and the right people who have got different skill sets, who are knowledgeable in their own realms, okay, in their own areas, coming together, inshallah. And I will conclude on that. Wa alaikum salam features, mashallah, all the way from Canada. I don't know what time it is there, mashallah, tabarakallah. But I will conclude on that. And until next week, Mustafa, all of you, jazakumullah khair. And I will let him over there send his greeting first.
And for me, Abdurraheem Green, it's Assalamu alaikum and Jazakallah khair for tuning in. And him over there.
For me, Abdul Haqq Baker, wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This has been a piece of pizza, and we look forward to seeing you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.